Trump is officially declaring the Israel, American, and Iran conflict over. He's declaring it the 12-day war and declaring peace, permanent peace. We'll get into that in a little bit. With some Florida news here, David Jolly, a former Republican, announces that he is running. This enters into quite a few high-stakes names. We'll get into that. And lastly, Governor DeSantis signs a bill to allow condos some financial relief after the condo safety law was passed in 2022. My name is Michael Bradford. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Gap Fillers podcast. This is episode number 24. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started here. So the 12-day war is over officially, according to Trump. Now, this is currently developing as of 9 o'clock on the East Coast. Iran officials are all over the place currently. Netanyahu says there is peace, and Trump says there's peace. However, just a few minutes ago, the foreign minister for Iran said there was no official peace declaration or ceasefire agreement. So this is a direct quote from him. As Iran has repeatedly made clear, Israel launched war on Iran, not the other way around. As of now, no agreement on any ceasefire or cessation of military operations has been agreed to. However, provided that Israeli regime stops its illegal aggression against the Iranian people no later than 4 a.m. Tehran time, we have no intention to continue our response afterwards. This kind of mirrors the Trump response after Iran attacked shot a few missiles at the American military base in Qatar. Supposedly, Qatar also was a huge role in mediating this ceasefire. Again, this supposed ceasefire. So it's currently developing. There's not much to say beyond on that ceasefire in particular. The idea that we got involved, I really don't like. This is one of those conflicts I really prefer to stay out of, primarily because in so many times in the past, it's just led to more and more destabilization, right? We've gone through this with Libya, with Gaddafi. We've gone through this in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. Afghanistan with the Taliban and all that. So we constantly get dragged into this. Now, most people think that it's going to be a one and done, like the Persian Gulf War. 30 days and that was done and over with. And Trump seems to be trying to play like this is his expertise in mobilizing and maneuvering, which it really may be, but the idea that we got involved in something that at the time had no clear sign of ending and demanding regime change and all that clearly didn't look good. Now, if we stop here, it's I don't like the idea that a president can unilaterally get the U.S. into war. That functions a lot more unconstitutionally than the Constitution allows. You're supposed to go to Congress for a declaration of war, even if it is a 12-day war. Because if you start a war, if you start a military action and don't call it a war, you can be dragged into it. By the time you get into 60 days into a war, you might lose, and you'll automatically be dragged into, you have to vote for war now, right? It's the bogus idea that I despise in modern military conflicts. Well, we can't ask Congress because the element of surprise. You can literally have a vote on it immediately, like closed. How they design bills, in closed door meetings. They can do all that in closed door meetings. come out, even don't even televise it, vote yay or nay, and then release it. If we declare a war, we declare a war. But let the representative of the people, the president, is not the unilateral sole representation of the people. We have the entire legislature and the Congress. More and more lately, over the past 50 years, really in the past 80 years since World War II, the president has grabbed more and more power. Every president has, with very, very few exceptions, and getting them back. And of course, I despise when Trump goes after the most conservative of members of Congress and then lets off, with a light touch with the neocons that that attack him. It's a very odd thing that Trump does. It's why I didn't vote for him the first time, and why I'm very reluctant to support him this time. He's wearing thin with the couple of things he's doing, primarily in foreign policy like this. There's a couple other things, but most of the time it's just attacking the people, or the spending. That's what it was. The spending is also the other thing that I really, really don't like, that Trump is getting onto some of the best members of Congress for, particularly Thomas Massie and Rand Paul. Matt Gaetz was in Congress and was going to be his attorney general, but I think that was actually a ploy to get him out of Congress. Anyways, so that's that. It remains open to be seen. It's currently developing. See what it goes like in the next few weeks. Okay, so David Jolly, a former representative from Florida, former Republican representative, has announced that he is running for governor of Florida in 2026. This makes him the first big name to announce as a Democrat to be running. The Democrat Party in Florida is very much in disarray. You have a few members of Congress, spread across the state, but for the most part, it's actually very largely Republican. You go, Maxwell Frost in Orange County here, and then you have a large part in Osceola, Kissimmee, and then you have around a couple of the major cities. But for the most part, all of our representatives, we have a super majority here in Florida of Republicans. So this David Jolly is running as a Republican-esque. So he's trying to be more of a moderate Democrat, kind of like a blue dog, right? So this is from Fox 13. This is a quote from him saying, "I'm for lower corporate taxes because I think this leads to greater economic growth," which totally true. However, here's the kicker. "But I'm more for gun safety legislation because I think it reduces violence in our state." Well, that's just absolutely wrong. That's the you get the carrot and then you get the stick, right? So he's trying to run a coalition, kind of the urban Republicans that aren't so strong on gun rights, and then you have Democrats that are full on ban guns. So he acknowledged that there's a disadvantage in running as a Democrat. However, if you run as a Republican, you have to beat 5 people in the primary. You got big names like Byron Donalds, possibly Casey DeSantis. There's even a rumor that Matt Gaetz is going to throw his hat in the ring. So there's quite a few members of high prestige names are already running or possibly running for governor on the Republican side. So David Jolly, definitely not like the most name recognized, the high name recognition person there is. In fact, I didn't even know who he was until I did a little bit of research. So he's running on affordable housing and insurance reform, proposing more of a single-payer Medicare system for the insurance in Florida. This will actually be a high priority issue in the governor election because there's been a massive increase in housing insurance with hurricanes and regulations and stuff like that. It's been very odd how Florida has not been able to consolidate any good, meaningful reform. And that's something that the Republicans should definitely focus on to cut out the heels out from any kind of organization from the Democrats. So he's running on that. Public education, he wants to raise teacher pay by 30%. There is very little, if no, correlation between the increase in teacher pay and the use of the increase in teacher pay and the increase in grades, right? You usually have something like a survivorship bias, right? So the people who get good grades, private schools or whatever, that get good grades, it's because they pay the teachers more. No, the teachers get paid more because people are paying high amounts of money for a good education, but the idea is that you're basically squeezing out teachers from the other place. But the idea that you're going to get these these urban schools, these in low income areas, you're going to get better grades because you're going to get better teachers is just not true. So the environment, again, he toxicology, which I actually am in favor of figuring out a way to mitigate that because of the fertilizer runoffs. Now, I think all of this is just political maneuvering. I don't think that he really has a huge shot. There are probably a couple other Democrats that are going to hop. This wouldn't be the first time that Florida has had a former Republican try to run as a Democrat. You all would remember Charlie Crist tried to do the same thing. So there's a couple things like that because of how dominant the Republican Party now is in Florida. It's amazing just to think about 12 years ago with when Obama and was that 20? No, that was good night. 16 years ago, Obama won Florida both times he for president. It's just amazing to see how quick that turnaround has happened between Governor Rick Scott and DeSantis, both running pretty successful governors and 2 terms because Florida has an 8-year limit on statewide terms. So it'll be interesting. David Jolly is running for a Democrat, running for governor. So the last thing I want to talk about here is the condo safety laws. So in 2022, after the Surfside building collapsed, killing 98 people. This is from the AP. There was a bill that passed that basically made it mandatory for engineers to be paid to inspect every 30 years or 25 years if the building is within 3 miles of the coast. All right, and then every 10 years after that. This is because the Champlain Towers, which is part of the Surfside community, was 40 years old and just collapsed right before its recertification process. So really what's happening here is that they're running into this problem where there are millions of condos here in Florida, especially within a couple miles of the ocean, which would require a lot more inspection, and there are very few structural engineers. So what is happening is that there are 1.5 million condos in Florida. So in fact, they say condominium units, right? So you can divide that. So there actually aren't 1.5 million like buildings, but there are units, right? So that means about 28,000 associations, right? So of those 900, of those units, 912 are 30 years or older. And they over 2 million residents reside in them. Now, I think that's a little bit of a misunderstanding because condos are often kind of they're often share. They're all what is it called? The share. Wow, blanking on that term. Anyways, they're not lived in full term. They're Airbnbs and stuff like that. So, man, it's blanking on that, and it's taking me off. Anyway, so there are only 650 structural engineers in the state of Florida, which means that you do the math, you divide it a little bit, and there's a massive gap. And these are structural engineers that aren't just doing the condos, so that's going to be a huge problem. So, in doing so, in order to quell that cost, the law of unintended consequences, the government often does and then has to do something else to fix a problem that they didn't see coming. All right, so they're basically it's a law that allows condo associations to take out loans and direct payments for these reserve funds to basically to allow them to pay for this structural engineering. Speaking at Monday's bill in Clearwater, this is a direct quote from the AP again. Republican State Senator Ed Hooper said that the 2022 law was meant to ensure there was never another collapse like Surfside. In retrospect, he said some of the requirements enacted were probably an overreaction, typical, which lawmakers are hoping now to correct. Now it's time to make the change, Hooper said. Elderly people are losing their condos because they could not afford to make the increase in their monthly HOA fees, and that's just wrong. Well, that is just one of the major problems, and this is also kind of it's disguised because there's been so many people moving to the state of Florida that it's kind of disguised underneath between that and the increase in demand, right? So, and with inflation and all that, it is hard to tell meaningfully. It's not always easy to tell which ones are just HOA fees increasing because of inflation or because of this ruling, because of this new safety law. Now, I will say that this is a good law. The problem is that you're going to end up having these associations kind of levy their fees in such a way that they're going to be perpetually in debt, and that kind of sets you up for a little bit of a bubble if you're not careful. Especially with interest rates being the way they are now, if you're stuck with high interest loans as a condo association and your asset price your asset depreciates because of lack of demand or the market softens or whatever, that it's going to leave you exposed with having to take out loans against the property or different things like that. So got to watch out for that. Plus, the condo owners also are watching out for hurricanes because we've had a couple of years where it's been back to back, particularly in the Tampa Bay area. So it's one thing that I don't like is regulation, and I understand why regulation exists, especially in these kinds of situations. Right, you have to have certain agreements. Because in the law, in the past, like tenant laws and stuff like that, you were able to take advantage of people who weren't able that had very little bargaining power, right? But now this is also something that has been a problem with immigration process, right? If you're a new immigrant, you were able to be taken advantage of. That's one of the major things all the way from the 1800s that the U.S. has had a problem with, is that you have somebody that's used to living in squalor or in poor conditions, and they just move to the U.S. and live in poor and squalor conditions, right? And in doing so, you bring the whole standard of living down. And that's the one of the big negatives about immigration, right? Is that if there's no assimilation process, right? If somebody is not goaded or pushed into a certain direction, this is that cultural problem I keep on talking about. That basically Canada is running into, right? Canada's foreign policy is now is very heavily directed by the Sikh population, and so they had actually had a problem getting the G7 with India there, because the Sikhs are a large minority in India, and they're kind of persecuted. So there was butting heads there. So, and Canada has taken in 400,000 people, and it's only a country of 40 million people. So they're dealing with their own immigration problems, just like the U.S. is. However, the U.S. is kind of wanting a secondary class almost, right? This is what the Democrats are kind of pushing for, with who will do this, who would do that, and Trump even backed off of deporting field workers and stuff like that. And for the longest time, people they say Americans won't do these jobs. No, Americans won't do that job for that price, right? And and American corporations especially have taken advantage of the immigration process for so long that they've been able to run a profit off of American farms using illegal labor that have artificially kept prices depressed wages, so they can make more profit, so they can charge Americans, they can charge Americans less than other places, but in doing so, they consolidate more of the industry. There's 4 major food producers in the U.S., like 3 major meat packers. You got Tyson and Purdue, different, and then you got General Mills and Kellogg's, and all these corporations kind of collaborate with each other to squeeze out other competitors. Anyways, I digressed a little bit there. But I also see this as being a problem for lower or single unit owners. This might become a problem, squeezing out more consolidation in the housing market. That's actually a huge problem here in Florida, is that you got these large developers that are sweeping in, buying up plots of land and developing the tar out of the rural areas, and you end up with thousands or hundreds of cookie cutter houses as a result of this. So I don't want that to become even more of an issue that might prolong the developer ownership in the state. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me. Once again, if you subscribe on YouTube or on Spotify, that would be great. That will help support the podcast. You can follow me on X at GapFellers1776, or at Facebook on Florida Gap Fillers Podcast. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, once again, and have a good week.